Welcome, welcome, welcome to our international podcast. Below the belt, folks, we have our person of interest today right off the bat. As you can see, is Khemraj Ramjattan. He is the leader of the Alliance for Change. He is a member of parliament. Here's a fellow who has been in politics a long time and he has a lot to show. Because he got a lot of folks who've been in politics for a long time, but they didn't do nothing. They're just placeholders. But Khemraj has built an entire party, a formidable institution in its own right, and we're so privileged to have him as our person of interest. And on today of all days, and I'm going to tell you folks why, of today of all days, we're privileged to have Khemraj with us. You know you love him, I love him, we all love him. He's with us, and we're going to be talking about a lot of electoral issues from a legal standpoint. And so guys, share the live, smash that emoji button for us. We're going to dispense with some of the usual stuff we bring before we talk about our person of interest, what's happening in the news and so on. For today, we're going to dispense with that aspect of it, and we're going to get right into why Khemraj is our person of interest today. Folks, next week is an interesting week. Let me tell you right off the bat, it's an interesting week because next week, Wednesday, let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. Do let us know that. We want you folks to be hearing us loud and clear. Next week, the CCJ is handing down a decision. Please let us know. Please let us know if you're hearing us loud and clear. Next week, as we said, is an interesting day at the CCJ. The CCJ, as our final appellate court, is going to be handing down a decision with one of the elections petition. I believe it's petition 99 that is before the Caribbean Court of Justice. Romilly Anders says they can hear us loud and clear, and Michaela Andrews Courts and Amir and all the other folks. Welcome, welcome. Share the live, folks. Smash that emoji button for us. Don't get us out here looking thin. It's the 12th day of October already. You folks got to pick up the pace a little bit if you're going after some. You got some plans, you got some hopes, some dreams, some aspirations. You're pursuing, guys. You got to pick up the pace a little bit. It's the 12th day of October. We're already approaching mid-month, and you know you got to do what you got to do. We're going to have each and every one of you who joining us from the diaspora: Sheena Hazel, Irwin Don Cook, Will Anderson, Yolanda Thomas, Irwin Don, Desiree Manuel. The whole gang is here, and Vincent, and all the other folks who are joining us. Share the live, good folks, and smash that emoji button. And folks, we are very, very privileged to have Khemraj Ramjattan with us today. And I'll tell you why it's such a special day to have Khemraj. It is Khemraj's 50th birthday. Khemraj, how's it going? Happy birthday, sir.
Thank you. That might be a little misrepresentation.
Well, I'm not asking the maths. I'm asking the maths.
Oh, you know? Yes.
Far off we are. Okay.
Yeah, 12 years. I really doesn't.
Wow.
I am 62 today.
Wow. Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Happy birthday. How do you feel?
I feel like 50, as you rightly said.
I was going by looks.
No, it has been a wonderful journey. Family, politics, the law, those are the three big parts of me. And it's a journey I would always want to go over again if I was asked the question. And
would you do the same way?
oh yeah, that's exactly the same way. Hardly think of anything that would have been done differently. And I like consistency. I like constancy. And so it would have been a journey that, you know, even if I were an officious bystander, would have enjoyed myself. But I'm the actual agent doing the journey, and so I'm enjoying it. I still feel I have lots more work to do. I still have a longer part of the journey to complete. But I will be there. I will be there with you guys, because I must commend you too. Your companionship, your camaraderie, and the company itself is what has also made me enjoy this journey. It has been made all the more wonderful because of you guys.
Khemraj, you're a leader of leaders, I dare say, and I think it is because of who you are. Lots of us are in this business called politics, the business of helping people, advancing interest. And it's because of your good stewardship too. We have come the way we have come. I think we're all tremendously privileged, folks. At 62 doesn't look it at all. But happy birthday! Lots of folks on social media saying happy birthday.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Yeah, should we be so lucky? Should we be so lucky to see 62? 62 years, yeah.
Yeah, why not? 62 years young, I would say. But what I like to express is the fact that so many things were done during that 62 years. Even at my high school days, university days, University of West Indies days, University of even London days, and the fact that you came out as a prosecutor initially in the legal profession, working with the DPP's chambers for some 4 years, then joining forces with Mr. Bernardo Santos, Senior Counsel, and later Attorney General, and then going into your own legal firm, Ramjattan and Associates. The politics of it all too. As you would know, I was a very long-standing PPP member, led its youth section, and then became a central committee member of the People's Progressive Party until I was expelled in 2004 by Barry Jagdale. Lots of people would want to know why sometimes he eggs me on, and it is for that reason, because he had made a statement, that I have to disprove, that I'll be worth nothing outside of the PPP. I think I've proven to him that I'm worth lots outside of the PPP. And of course, joining hands with Sheila Holder, who we commemorated on our death anniversary recently with a plaque on the wall of the Sheila Holder conference room, and of course, Raphael Trotman, and all the others, Kathy Hughes and Nigel Hughes, and all those that were there. But with the three of us, we managed to establish the Alliance for Change, and we are where we are. We have managed also to do successful elections at the national, regional level, and to gain government in a coalition arrangement prior to the last one, that is 2015. And we're here back as in the opposition, fighting, of course. And we will continue that fight for the people. I had always, from a very young boy, wanted to help to influence the ordering of society, as it were. And you could have only done that by, of course, making a name for yourself, which would have then entitled you to go into the political platform, and after you get there, to be successful, and then to be a parliamentarian, and then to largely influence legislation, motions, the entire gamut of activities that a politician indulges in. And so it is where I am as a result of largely achieving and accomplishing almost all of that in the various parties and partnerships that I've had. It is with the PPP, my own AFC, and also with APNU AFC. I've also had good relationships too for that journey with a lot of other political leaders in TUC, Mansour Nadir, even prior to Mansour Nadir. Sharad, your favorite speaker, and of course so many others, Wolfram Koran from Arnold, Timothy Jonas, Senior Counsel too. We had also in the AFC Ramsarup. Peter Ramsarup as our CEO. So we have crossed the Rubicon, as it were, all variety and shades of opinions I have met up with and associated with, and sometimes disagreed with.
Excellent. But let's talk about some of those disagreements. You were there, Khemraj, the 2020 March 2nd general and regional elections. You were there intensely as prime ministerial candidate, rightly deserved. Come through that protracted electoral period, you've been have intimate knowledge of what transpired in that recount and what resulted from that recount as well. We believe strongly on this side that the current government, the current regime, they're in there because of invalid votes and lots of skullduggery that happened during that electoral process. And lots of us lots of it we're still working through right now. They have taken a very chaotic approach to it, if one should look at it in that way, um, and attacking what has happened there on a number of fronts. Let's start talking, for instance, about some of these cases that they have before the magistrates court, because that is what they have done. They have charged a number of persons with electoral fraud, and they brought a number of those cases. Let's start on that front. There was one case in particular I think we can start with, the Holodar case. Anil Nandilal was seeking to prove that there was rigging of elections with that Holodar case. And he told the Chief Justice, who stressed several times that that kind of thing is better proven in an elections petition.
Yeah.
He told her he had the evidence against Mingo. He had the evidence he was going to bring, and she said that she asked him several times. The reports are there. Whether he did have the evidence, he said yes. And the day before she's about to give the judgment, he pulled that case back, the Holodar case, infamous case, because the litigant in that case is predeceased now.
Yes, that's right. He committed suicide.
Yeah. And
he was a driver of the Attorney General, I think.
Yeah, he was a driver of the then, well, Attorney General now.
Mm-hmm.
But he was his driver and a family member too. The point I want to make is that there was no evidence produced. 2 years later, you have all of these other cases at the magistrate level, and they go no place. Talk to us about your own impression of this process and on this limb in which they've gone out.
Well, it is a limb to more or less character assassinate. There's a limb that I feel they want to pursue their own narrative. Remember, we feel that a lot of things as a result of that recount are at the hands and intellectually authored by the PPP now. I mean, we were all uncertain prior to that recount, but the recount had so many discrepancies and so many irregularities to the extent that we could now place them in certain positions. That having been said, and it is now open information for everybody, the PPP wants a narrative that is going to paint them as the innocents and the opposition as the guilty. But in all of these cases, the fact is that you have to prove and prove beyond a reasonable doubt. They are not coming up with the evidence. Delays have been happening. They also wanted to character assassinate other people like Minister David Patterson, the former Minister of Finance, Jordan, and so many other people. And as we go along, we are finding out that they don't have anything. And they don't want the cases to start, as it were. But they have a base that believes almost 90% of what they say. And when they carry that line, the narrative is going to go into the minds in a kind of an ideological positioning, so that they're going to look good and we're going to look bad. The way the matters got to be heard in accordance with our constitution and our courts, they're not bringing the evidence. What they're doing is forming what is called a commission of inquiry. Okay, they can form the commission of inquiry, but the place that has been institutionalized as that place where these evidences must come out to prove that indeed we are the culprits, if they want to prove that, is the High Court, the Magistrates Court, the Court of Appeal, the CCJ. And they are not doing that. And to that extent then, it is all part of the very skillful game and the clever game that the PPP has to turn what they did into a narrative that indeed they are angels. But people now are seeing their character, the fact that there is so much discrimination, the fact that there is so much corruption. You go and talk to any businessman at any cocktail in Guyana, and they will tell you, apart from a very elite clique, you got so much corruption in Guyana now. And I was up quarantine to meet some friends and family in a reunion that we had, and a big birthday bash, and a number of them I spoke to. And things are so difficult. And all the promises that they indicated that they're going to keep, renegotiate Exxon deal, renegotiate this, renegotiate that, 50,000 jobs, this, that. Almost every single thing we notice are now being violated, all the promises. And to that extent, too, people are saying very loudly, and especially support bases like Bobby's Quarantine. Now we're going back there with them. They lied to us, they fooled us. And that is part of the narrative. Because they're having so much of difficulties and challenges within their constituencies, they want to let the narrative of what's happening in the court be told, and they are hopeful that they're going to win these matters. I am hopeful that they do not, and that for whatever reasons, the successes are going to come the way of the opposition.
Excellent. Khemraj, we're talking about these cases, the fact that, again, they said they had all this evidence about rigging and all of that 2 years out. The cases are going nowhere in the High Court. It was Desiree Bernard, Madam Justice Desiree Bernard, who said in the Aubrey Norton case, Khemraj, and in the summary of the Joe Hamilton case, that it is imperative that trust and confidence continues to be reposed in GCOM, and that GCOM must do everything to dispel that lack of confidence and any perception that GCOM may have acted unfairly or not have acted fairly. That being said, there's been a call on GCOM to review the March 2nd, 2020 general regional election because of all of the things that have come out from that process. But there's been a reluctance of GCOM to do so. As a matter of fact, Claudia Singh, the chairman of GCOM, has been at pains to say it is the
High Court.
It is the High Court that must review and must investigate and then interrogate and all of that. That being said, it's the same chairman of GCOM who was just handed to the Attorney General a list of names of persons who would have been out of the country and yet voted on election day. A list of names of persons who would have been deceased but yet voted on election day.
Yeah.
Try to make sense of that to guys, because it doesn't make sense, because he's not, the period to file election petition has gone, but yet he has requested this information and has been supplied with it.
Well, there's a little bit of contradiction and inconsistency. You see, all electoral matters and all matters dealing with registration of voters, voters list, and all of those are largely in the purview of the GCOM. And when you had an elections that created such an ugly scene after the date was held, right up to the 5 months after, there is need, Sherrod, that there be a revisit and a review of all the challenges that were met, including declarations that were being made by Mr. Mingue, including certain problems of what happened at East Coast with boxes, so many things that recount brought out. And it is the truth. Now, if you are an employer, if you are in charge of, let's say, a company or a constitutional entity, it requires an in-house set of investigations to reveal what caused what to happen, and the why, and the where and why and how it happened. It is almost, automatic that you would have had that. It's like running a business, and there are some difficulties and challenges in the business. You have to do a review. Get you some experts, or you yourself, if you're an expert at it, find out what happened. That was not the case. The president wanted a separate kind of inquiry, because indeed it is true, and I could understand her legal argument, Madam Claudette Singh, the chairperson, when she said that the elections petition must be the place in which there must be major investigation. But when you're going there for investigation, in two petitions, I think 88 and 99, you have a whole set of blockages occurring as a result of the government of the day, the PDP, not wanting that investigation to happen at the court. Technicalities are used. In one case, I think it was the 88, in which the rules that was used was this, that because one person, and that person didn't have much of an interest in blocking the petition, David Granger was not served in time, the whole petition now was dismissed. It is like, you have a damages claim of some sort, or any claim for that matter, and you sue 10 persons, but you fail to serve one person. The action against the other 9 must be dismissed. I mean, the importance of an elections petition for the country, it could result in so many things that could be horrific. You have to ensure that at least the fact that one is not served properly, the matter will go on, and it might not go on against the one that was not properly served. That's okay. And the one in this case that was not properly served literally didn't have an interest in the case not being heard. As a matter of fact, he had every interest that the case be heard. And to that extent, then, we find that when the PPP now is trying to block the matter, of course, we had a ruling from that Chief Justice that indeed says that the whole case is dismissed, but then it was appealed. And now they're blocking the Court of Appeal from hearing the matter. When the Court of Appeal has now ruled that this matter ought to be heard, even if you interpret a certain provision of the Constitution one way, there is a Court of Appeal Act which says that you just can't shift aside a Court of Appeal from scrutinizing High Court decisions. How could you do that? All of a sudden, you're ousting the Court of Appeal jurisdiction from hearing a matter. And you use, again, another technical argument that the matter was not heard meritoriously or meritocratically, meaning the whole substance of it was ruled on. It was just a procedural issue. Procedural issue that brings the matter to an end is a dismissal. And if by a dismissal you can appeal to a higher court, well, certainly you should. And the courts must not hesitate into telling people like the Attorney General and the other lawyers for Barjagdale and so on. By the way, Mr. Douglas Mendes is a close friend of mine. We were at law school together. We must be able to tell them, or at least the court must be able to tell them, that you can't just on these minimalist issues say that our jurisdiction must be ousted, and so we can't scrutinize what a high court judge did. How could it be? A high court judge could, for very selfish reasons, knock off a case, and then the argument will be that a Court of Appeal or a CCJ or apex court cannot scrutinize what that high court judge has done. I thought that was an extremely strange argument. But of course, in a court of law, you can have all of that once, of course, the lawyers are trying to win the case. And I am hoping now that the matter is at the CCJ, that the CCJ is not going to in any way cause an ousting of its jurisdiction from scrutiny of a high court judge ruling, especially in a procedural matter, which then ends the case as important as a petition in which all the discrepancies and all the irregularities are there, which can, conclude that the elections was not lawfully conducted.
Khemraj, your memory might be sharper than my own, but the CCJ, during this electoral process, in one of those cases, I remember, it deals with a special aspect of the Constitution that says that in the election process, the Court of Appeal had the final say. And then the CCJ said, no.
Yeah.
And in the very same way, you cannot oust our jurisdiction from, again, as our highest appellate court, reviewing any matter.
That's correct.
All its way back to jurisdiction.
That's so correct. Appellate courts, especially apex courts, do not so interpret constitutions. It was the same thing that we had with I remember a very early case where Justice Desiree Bernard had made a ruling. There was a lot of talk that there should be conclusivity brought and ousting jurisdictions and ousting powers and so on. But I must say that when it comes to scrutinizing lower courts' decisions, courts, and the apex court, in this case the CCJ, will hesitate long and hard before they ever make that kind of ruling. And I believe that it will be trashing themselves if they were to so pronounce. And I know very many of those judges there who have written extensively on the need not to oust the apex court's jurisdiction. They themselves having said that in the case where you're mentioning. And so to the extent then as to what is a projection as to what they might come out with, it would be very foolhardy for me to make a statement that they are going to oust themselves from having jurisdiction to scrutinize.
Yeah. And if memory serves me correct, I think we were dealing with the issue of valid votes, and the Court of Appeal had I think by a majority ruled that a lot of votes were invalid, and the CCJ and a lot of folks felt that it couldn't go far because of what the Constitution said.
That's right.
The Court of Appeal had the final say, but the CCJ said differently. But that aside, Khemraj, the CCJ in a recent ruling, and in the person of Justice Witt in particular, did find it astonishing, and you made a foray into this earlier. He talked about the urgency of which this matter was being heard in the local courts. He said it seems as though you could get a case knocked out, for one day late service, a whole petition, but 2 years later, these petitions were languishing in the court. Justice Witt found that astonishing. And the AG didn't seem to have a rejoinder to that at all.
Well, he couldn't. He just could not. That is one of the compelling arguments. And Justice Witt is a very experienced, brilliant judicial mind. And that was an argument that literally put a checkmate position on the Attorney General and the lawyers for the respondents. And that is an indication as to how they are thinking. Of course, Justice Witt is brilliant that he can even overcome his own arguments, and that is how lawyers operate. I want to tell you that. Although that might be their thinking initially, for all you know, they might very well find some other credible argument to counter that. I don't see any right now, but at this stage, that is why I'm saying that they are not going to be shifted from a position of wanting to say that, you want to deal with the thing as expeditiously as possible, but here it is, you're trying to block it. Well, why not? Let the courts deal with the merits of the matter, not procedurally. Okay, you could have made the points procedurally, but then it should have been allowed to be dealt with with the merits of it being argued and determined and so on, and probed at the High Court level. Because a lot of that probing will prove that a lot of mess occurred during that election.
And that is what we should collectively want to pursue. What exactly happened? Missing statutory documents, you had missing votes of identity, a lot of the votes, lots of the ballots were coded, region 10 ballots in region 4, 7 in 3, and a whole manner of stuff. And then you had the impersonations and all of those stuff. We should want to get to the bottom of that. And why, for the life of us, Khemraj, people who spend almost every day trying to paint the other side of rigors are fighting tooth and nail for these petitions to be heard.
It is to hide the actual rigging done and by whom. That is the reason. More and more as I think about it, that if we really wanted to know the truth or to put sunshine on some dark spaces of the last elections, allow the petition to be heard. And in allowing the petition to be heard, utilize what happened and transpired in the recount. It is very vital because that recount was like, we play cricket. And if you're uncertain whether the ball will hit the stump in an LBW decision, you then ask for, the monitors to come on to find out what really took place, if the man is out or not, or if he has an edge. To find out whether indeed that kind of microscopic scrutiny, he did touch the ball and he was caught behind. That is what an elections petition is. And so we have to get this kind of second view of what transpired via a court of law with trained legal minds, prosecuting and defending and also adjudicating. But the PDP doesn't want that. They want the case that simply be scrubbed out. And then, all the things that the opposition have been talking about what transpired and so on, to be rubbed out from history and only their narrative as if they are the gods and the angels of the situation. Quite frankly, they're the devils here. And when you behave that way in relation to litigation, it is obvious that you have an oblique motive of not wanting to all the facts to come out.
Because, explain to us, Khemraj, as best as you can, whether there's method for this madness we're seeing. So there can be no, according to GCOM, review of their own processes internally. But yet, outside of an election petition, you hand Anil this information about impersonation, dead voters, persons overseas, out of the jurisdiction. What could he be pursuing? So you have that happening on one limb. You got what's happening at the magistrates level with all of these electoral fraud cases. Irfan seemed to have his own COI happening. Jagyu had indicated very early he wasn't in favor of the COI, but Irfan seemed to have had his own way here. He won the COI and then got these impersonation that people built on the jurisdiction. And then you got what happening at the magistrate level. You got 2 elections petition in the court system. Is there a method to this madness with the people?
Well, the PNP has always created parallel institutions. When they realize, too, that one institution or one track will derail their train, they then create a parallel track. Not necessarily the parallel track will not derail their train either, but it is just that they would want that safety of having another parallel track for which they could run their train. And that is why they are now collecting the evidence. By the way, which evidence was all there? I mean, I am well aware that we in the opposition now, at the time we in government, we ask for all the names of those people from the Commissioner of Police who had voted as a result of what transpired in the recount, because we were getting the information as to who voted, and to find out whether these people are in the country. Remember on election day, I think it was 2 persons had gone to meet Mr. Anil Nandalal in his courts in connection with certain impersonation allegations by members in that community. Mm-hmm. You remember that? Mm-hmm. It was Amna Ali and Basil Williams, I think. And of course, there was a denial and so on. However, what we are now seeing happening inside of those ballot boxes there was a lot of people who are not in the country, or from evidence from the chief immigration officer, who are not in the country, about 4,000 and more, which is like a seat here in Guyana, not being in the country at the time when that election was held. And they are saying that we must bring these 4,000 people to say so. We don't have to bring the people. We have gotten the evidence that these people are overseas. At the time when they left, they did not record when they came back in, so there is a presumption that they were not in the country. However, on the papers from the various polling stations, it is recorded as if they were in the country and they voted. And a lot of these people, obviously were not in the country and so on. So this is what makes this thing so degenerate, to the extent whereby GCOM ought to have done a review and a revisit to find out really what transpired for themselves, right? And we have to await also the petition, the merits of it, as I've been mentioning all the time, that these issues are dealt with there to the extent of we know what happened. Because when you're going to have 100 or so names that are dead, people who are dead, and the names still recorded as alive and having voted, and 4,000 plus more names, well, what are you talking about? They want to have a narrative that we name about 8,000 people, and 4,000 are genuine, it necessarily means that we are all wrong about what the allegations we're making. But 4,000 plus were indicated by the chief immigration officer as being absent from Guyana. The argument is might be put that they come in with a second passport of some sort. But all passports now in Guyana, whether it's a US passport or a Ghana passport, they are certain digitized coding system. So if Khemraj Ramjattan got a US passport and he got a Ghana passport because he got dual citizen, when he comes back, the record will be in the immigration office that Khemraj Ramjattan is in the country. Whether he come back by Ghana passport or when he went out with his USA passport. And so they can't use that to say that, the people could have come back and vote the 4,000. It's a lot of trash. And so this is what we're saying, that it had to be an extremely clever way and method that they utilized, and it was brought out in the recount.
Yep. Quite interesting time. A lot of moving parts. We still, in many ways, trying to conclude the March 2nd, 2020 general and regional election because so much is still up in the air, so much we still don't know. And then again, you have these folks who are fighting tooth and nail these cases in the course. In this part of why, Khemraj, we're seeing certain activities of the PP as though they're anticipating an early general and regional election, perhaps based on the CCJ and some of their utterances too, perhaps.
Yeah, well, they want power at all costs. I mean, when they did that no confidence motion, and I have been slapped with a big damages judgment against me for saying what I think about Charandas. It all started there on because we found oil in 2015, and Jagdeo, he is an intellectual author of all these skullduggery in my view, very smart politician he is, and then he attunes himself clearly to what he can get done, and he generally gets a lot of things done. Arrange this no confidence, and it all started there because they want that oil monies. What they're going to do with the oil monies, we are now seeing. It is not as if they're spending it properly. It is a lot of corruption involved. And so, yes, indeed, the PPP really going to do everything that it takes to stay in power. They're going to monopolize the power arrangements in this country to be exclusively in the hands of people who are not supposed to be there. And I have carried the argument that Jagdeo ought not to be there. Like Barack Obama, like Bill Clinton, and the constitution that we provided, the constitutional amendment that we provided, that you can't run a third term, was based on the American system. And in that American system, you have to come out from the show. Jagdeo, however, is in the show in a very big way. And that is totally rotten. But we know that he is a big part of it. And they're trying to carry the narrative that they are the archangels and the archdukes of good and all that is right and just for this country is what they're doing as a result of hiding all the nastiness and ugliness that they probably did during the course of that elections. And so we have to just fight it. We also have to carry our narratives too as to what transpired based on evidence, based on facts, that what transpired. And the recount is what we have. A recount that was observed by almost all the international observers. So it is important then that we get this replay, as it were. They put on the monitors to find out what really happened. And that replay is telling us that a lot of things happened. There's another reason why the petitions should be heard. Because just like we had in the Esther Pereira, you can't get voter ID cards and so on, and you can't do things unconstitutionally. It is fundamental that we settle these matters, bring finality and certainty to them, so that we will have better elections in years to come when elections are to be held. It is vital that all the facts be known, because as we go along and evolve as a country, and I think we're going to be one of the richest country and greatest democracy once we get these things right, that we must ensure that the journey that takes us there is now we journey that aspect of it, so that all of these things are now clearly set on the table, that this is what happened and that must not happen again. This is what happened and that too must not happen again. But when you try to hide them and a judge or an apex court cannot rule on them, you got plenty things to hide because you are obviously the culprit.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, talking about elections, Khemraj, one of the major uh, embassies, diplomats in this country have said that this country needs a clean, credible voters list. Even if you people read that at one point, but then they change your mind. The beauty that is.
Yeah. They want to use the bloatedness to do their impersonation. And that is the logical conclusion that I could come to. When in 1990, Desmond Hoyt had said that he was going ahead with the elections in Guyana, and he don't care what Shady Jagan talk, Carter had to tell him that that list, Mr. Desmond Hoyt, is not a pure list. There are plenty of people contending that it is not pure. We not only got people who are contending that it is not pure, that is the present 2020 list, 2022 list. We got it. All the observer team says that that must be sanitized and purified. You know what the pressures that came on Desmond Hoyt? It took 2 years thereafter to get a proper list from a GCOM. I think Collinson became the chairman of the GCOM. And he did a list, and then we went ahead and had the elections, and everybody was satisfied. Okay? Why not, when you get a bloated list and there is no measure of anybody saying that it is not bloated, it is bloated by about 300,000 people. Why not correct it by house-to-house registration, just like we had, and start the process of ensuring that there will not be civil strife as a result of any other elections in Ghana? I fear that half the country will not like the result, and they're going to do things that every other countryman of a democracy will do, because that's their duty if they feel it's unfairness. They will need votes. Why not set the system right, cleanse the list, purify and sanitize it to the extent that those who are in their homes in Guyana will be the ones that are voting? And you know, this argument that you can't take off names and all of that, that's not necessarily the legal position. I think we need to go back to court for purposes of ensuring that a residency requirement is fundamental in the Ghana Constitution. And we might have been in error. The Attorney General then, I think it's Bassel Williams, did not take that matter up to the Court of Appeal. But whatever it is, at this stage, to avoid all of this nastiness that can flow and the civil strife that can flow from a situation that is obviously ugly, you make sure that you cleanse the list. And all these people have indicated that we should have a clean voters list. As a matter of fact, the last court case, is it out of Belize or Dominica? The Cully matter from the CCJ. The CCJ judges made it very clear that the most important aspect, apart from some others, the actual day of the elections and the counting, is the registration of the voters who are going to vote. They said if you do not have a good quality list, that can be a ground on which you can take to the petition. And in the Cully case, I think I have sent it around to some of our colleagues in Parliament and so on, and with a quotation from that page, whereby it was stated there, elections list are very, very important, because the current country that had the elections that were being challenged, they mentioned and they had evidence that they gave to the GCOM people of that country, Dominica, Belize, that this is what it is. We have evidence that people who are not supposed to be on that list was on that list. So it is vital that we get our act together and GCOM gets its act together, rather than we then all be becoming involved in things that we to regard as untoward and civil strife and all kinds of actions.
Yep. Yep. Khemraj, this is a PPP who comports itself as being bastions of democracy and guardians. And we like to talk about transparency and accountability and good governance. And yet, when we look at their stewardship, and that stewardship is tested before the courts, they oftentimes find lacking. And I really want to say congrats to Roger Ford, who is on the forefront of lots of these cases, and lawyers like yourself and Darren Reid and many others, Selvin Peters and so forth. In so many cases, we can look back at, for instance, the one that had to do with Electoral. The minister put your hand on the Bible in the National Assembly and say, shortage you a citizen. The Chief Justice told us differently. We had that one. We had the case with the permanent, the parliamentary secretaries.
Yes, right. Kisun, is it?
Right. Kisun, Sarah, what's her name?
Mm.
And Ram Kisun.
Ram Kisun,
right?
yeah.
That case. So many others in which the PPP, what's one lacking? They want to do with them centralizing the constitutional agencies and the budgets. You know, so many of them the court had to push back against. But yet they come and talk about, they're rule of the law people, and they're guidance of the Constitution, and they want to look at the Constitution almost on a daily basis in this country, consulting with the leader of the opposition.
That's another one, yeah. Look, I have always stated that even when I was a member of the PDP, that is one of their weaknesses, the fact of good governance. You see, most of the PDP leaders are trained in Moscow. And I know of a very KGB people. Yes, these KGB people. And they probably have gotten themselves tied to the Putinian method rather than the American Jeffersonian or Madisonian methods. It is inherent in them to be powerful and strong and override the rule of law. They would like to see the rule of lawyers, as it were, rather than the rule of law. And that is why they would have their lawyers stacked up and saying in very garrulous fashion, this is what the law is, this is what the law is. And when they lose the case, they say, well, we will appeal it and this and that and whatever. Now, it is very much a characteristic of the PPP that their executive, I used to call it executive lawlessness. Executive lawlessness is what they perpetuate. And a number of cases that are coming out, not necessarily from the political people, but also other cases whereby they have been doing a lot of nonsense and thinking that they must be in charge, not the rule of law. And even when they lose the cases and so on, how they're cussing up the Court of Appeal judges, that is a distinctly shameless act on the part of the Attorney General when he would have, or not the Attorney General, I think he also criticized the Court of Appeal judges. But Durham Law, when he said that certain Court of Appeal judges must be defrocked because of injunctions being granted or not granted, I can't recall. But he is saying that because he didn't make the decision, senior people like Madam Janet Cummins must be defrocked. What's going on in his head? But then, of course, he does a lot of shameless acts in Parliament too. And that is what I always, that is what I always, feel offensive and insulting that comes from the PDP. They seem not to have their act together in relation to the rule of law. And that is going to be to their detriment. A lot of things they're doing, the squandering of the monies, cash transfers to their people, not only one time like the sugar workers, but 2 times severance payments. And the fisher folk monies. And when you ask of them, please give us the evidence that you are not discriminating by giving us the names and addresses and so on of the people who are benefiting from this money. Look, the coalition government left them a legacy that is beyond their imagination. $607 million in the first year, and then 1.2 billion they will collect this year. And with more platforms coming in, you're going to get probably 300,000-400,000 barrels per day, which then will give you $2 to $3 billion in forthcoming years. Spend that money equitably, equally, and ensure that you put in the wise decisions as to where it goes. Not only discriminate and buy the votes for the 2025 elections, they probably want to sell this kind of thing to their supporters to call in early elections. But I know inside of the PDP, some of them feel they're going to turn back minister, so they want to serve their full 5-year term. Some feel that they might not turn back parliamentarians, so they're against the decision to call in an early elections. And some of them are uncertain that they're going to win it because it's going to be so close. And businessmen and so on, their friends and family and so on, telling them, no, let me serve out this 5-year. Probably they want a little more stretch to do their corruption activities and so on too, to enrich themselves even further. So yes, there might be tune sung by some that let's hold the elections early, but it got kicked, people who are holding back for the reasons that I just mentioned. So it is important then that we look at all of these considerations and then come to the decision. But the biggest of the decision is they never like the rule of law. They still have a party constitution that says that all of them are communist and Marxist-Leninist. I have spoken to the American ambassador about that, but they feel that, because they're dealing with Exxon properly, ExxonMobil and so on properly, they are not necessarily what their constitution tells them. But the other day when they were called in by the State Department, Irfan Ali and Jagdeo and the rest of whoever else, they told them that two things comprise a democracy. Free and fair elections where you can change governments at every periodic 4 years, 5 years, whatever. But also, when you win elections, the other is good governance. And good governance means non-discrimination, the rule of law, the independence of the judiciary, not scandalizing the checks and balances that you have around the institutions, whether they be statutory or constitutional. These fellas don't know of that other half. They jump on free and fair elections, and all of that. And although they might have been intellectual authors for an unfree and an unfair elections, they want to change the narrative, as I mentioned. So we have to be very cautious in how we also educate the public as to what they're doing. And of course, they want to go into areas and strongholds of the opposition to change minds and all of that. But I know that the opposition areas are pretty strong because they see how they are governing. And their governance leaves a lot to be desired.
Can I just be talking about that? People see how the people is governing, and we outline several areas. There seems to be a breaking down of the guardrails in all of those areas. Now,
absolutely,
we deal with Ali as an installed president, but he's been given an opportunity, even under the circumstances, to leave a lasting legacy. Will Irvin be remembered? He seems to grow more arrogant as the days go by. Can he detach himself from the appendages, from the tethers that he have, and be his own man? He seems not to be dealing by the policy and the big issues. That put him on a stage to whine and to catch and to banter and so on. He seems to be good at that kind of thing. Could he step out of the shadows?
We cannot with Jagdeo there, as I have indicated. Nobody can with a Jagdeo there. You have to. Jagdeo had realized this with a Janet Jagan there. And although it was brutal and ruthless when he said you're a private citizen, no economics, get out of the place, and made Janet Jagan cry and never go back to Freedom House, that is a similar treatment you would have to get to Jagdeo if Jagdeo don't want to behave himself. You see, when you're not the power institutionally, meaning the numero uno by virtue of an elections like Irfan Ali is, those underneath you want to feel that they could do a better job than you. And so they will interfere with him. They will interlope in his territory. And that is exactly what Jagdeo does all the time. And he doesn't want anybody to ever think that Irfan Ali is the man running this country. He wants everybody in this country to feel that it is he who is doing that. And so he stifles, he cribs, and he confines Irfan Ali. And I believe that the earlier Irfan tell him, hey, get the hell out of here. I am in charge. You're a private citizen. Go and pasture, like how all the presidents of America pasture. You can go and do your thing and so on and read a book or write a book or whatever. That is what you got to do. So that you'll be free. You'll be at liberty to execute on the policies that he wants to. Because I believe that he has a heart, unlike Jagdeo, who I find sometimes can be very heartless and very, very brutal. And so you've got to get rid of that person. But somehow he seems checked by a number of his Central Committee members, if not executive members, and he probably is checked by a notion in his head that I don't think I can win these elections without Jagdeo. And that is foolish on his part. He must be his own man, because that's the legacy he will have to leave. Not a Jagdeo's legacy. Not has left his legacy and should be gone by now. And so to that extent, then I feel that's the analysis that they put in it. He will not be able to do that. And in the process, he's going to get angry. He's going to get angry with those close that are advising him that this is how he should do it. But I will urge him, get rid of Jagdeo. He is not of any value to you anymore. A lot of people know him for what he is. And so organizationally and also intellectually, because there are lots of policy issues and so on that has come from Jagdeo that is, beyond comprehension. And I think he is doing that to all the other wannabes in the party. He's the one that, in a sense, created this policy whereby when we say Irfan Ali must get the job, Irfan must get a job. And other titans, giants, in inverted commas, like Anil Nandalal and Frank Anthony and Vindi and so on, they can't do nothing. There's no competitiveness there now. And so he holds them and crib them and confine them. He and Gail Teixeira, they're all trained, very Marxist-oriented and centralist-oriented and authoritarianly oriented.
Yes. As we wrap up, what do you say to Guyanese home and abroad who listen to us? They see this country, they see the way it's going, the unfair treatment, how the resources are being developed. As we say all the time, friends, family, and favorites.
Yeah.
There's nothing for anybody else. Friends, family, and favorites. You see crime, it's on the increase. You see the economy has gone south. Everything is failing except oil and gas, which keeps everything afloat. Vincent Jordan called it very early by saying this is the Dutch disease. We are in the throes of the Dutch disease. What do you say to people who are disoriented, disinterested, fed up, of the country? They thought they would have done bad, but they have done this badly so early. We're rich, but yet so many people suffering and so poor. What do you say to people who have lost hope in this country? And just one person to break behind and jump in a plane and beat out.
Well, it's a lot we would have to say to them. Do not be diverted by the distractions that the PPP is throwing at you now. Do not. We will be even more hopeless a nation if you were to be allowed to be diverted that way. Jagdeo, as I have said at a public meeting and some other places, he liked to throw a spanner in the wheel there, in the spokes, and buck it up, and then move away. He shoots and scoot, create an issue, and then leave and so on. And that's the diversion that he wants. Look what he did with IBPADA G, that organization that was celebrating the decade of development of people of Africa and so on. This is disastrous for a country. And of course, Irfan should appreciate that. When he says that I am going to give you the cash transfer and he does not give the names of the people, that is discrimination. That is what you call no transparency of government. And we have to tell people that we must fight for it. Look, under a democracy too, it is not only the job of the judges or the job of lawyers in elections petition to fight for the democracy. People out there must never, never, never surrender. They must never, never, never give up hope. And so you too must appreciate that it is going to be a long battle. It is those who are willing to fight the principal battle, the long, hard battle, in somewhat an unrelenting way. We're going to be the ones for the beneficiaries, for our children and grandchildren, of a better democracy. Democracy is not perfect, but it is a system that can remedy itself. And notwithstanding the nonsense that we are suffering now at the behest of especially the PPP and certain leaders like Jack Day and so on, we have to appreciate that these things could be remedied. It could be remedied in elections. And it will change them. And I am hoping that that is what happens. It has happened in America. Trump was a disaster for America. America used to call all our countries shithole countries. He'd end up making America a shithole, quite frankly. And so, but it was remedied by virtue of the elections of Biden. And to that extent, then, we have to appreciate this. It could be remedied at other levels by judgments of the court, the apex court, and things like that. But we, the people, got to do our job of getting registered and showing that the names on the list. And when the elections come, you vote. And to them, I say then, do not give up hope, because we have periodic elections in Ghana. We can still win back and bring that governance that we know so good about. Because when you compare the governance of the PPP as against the coalition, we were tenfold superior in every respect. Professionalized the police force, did not train barbs at the judges, ensure that we asked them to have their opposition people inside of the statutory bodies, so many things. And so we can get that way again if we only have hope. So never give up hope.
Excellent. Khemraj, we're going to have to leave it there. We wish you a happy birthday, and hope the day only gets better from here, sir.
Thank you very much. And, you've utilized my birthday hour of it talking the politics. But I tell you what, I will do it again. No problem. Thank you very much for coming home and doing this.
Folks, that's going to do it for us at this end. Thanks for joining us. Sheila Boychild, we see you there, and Beatrice Selby, Anna Gordon, Rick, Kurt Johnson, and Karen, and Raphael, and all the other folks, Ronnie, Leander. Thanks for joining us for our subject podcast today. Below the belt, our person of interest was the one and only Mr. Khemraj Ramjattan, Member of Parliament, leader of the Alliance for Change. We will see you guys right back here at 8 this evening for our final program for the day. We will fight with our folks. Thanks for joining us. That's going to do it for us. Stay safe, folks. Stay safe out there. Yep, that's our time, guys. That's our time. Unfortunately, that's our time. Stay safe.
Yeah. No, there's plenty of government attack one day.